All right, welcome to Chapter 5 of the Essentials of Investments, Risk, Return, and the Historical Record. This is pretty similar content to Chapter 10 in Finance 302, Financial Management. However, this book adds a few twists that impacts mutual funds a little bit more. So first of all, we start out with holding period return. What's holding period return? Well, it's calculated pretty much like you would calculate your return on any other investment. Say a piece of rental property. So we start out here with if you sell the property, you take the price you sell it for minus what you paid for it. So that'd be called your capital gains, the difference. Whatever you made on the property, what you sold it for minus what you paid for it. And then any income you had during the period, and with stocks, there might be dividends, which is income that comes along the way. You divide, then you take your capital gain plus your dividend income and divide it by what you paid for a stock, and that would give you your holding period return. And on this slide, they identify what each of these components are. So if you take the price sold minus the price you paid for it, or the price bought, and divide it by what you paid for that stock, this component here is called the capital gains yield. And then if we take the dividend and treat it separately, divide it by the price that you paid for the stock, that is the dividend yield. So we had, in this case, an 8% capital gain yield. That's amount that we made on the sale of the stock. And in the meantime, the dividend yield, or the income, earned us a 5% return. So you add those two together and you get 13%. That's your total return, or holding period return, on that stock. Sometimes others might ask you, what was your return on a particular investment? Well, the book gives us 3 different ways to calculate our return, and these are not just academic terms. These are things that are used in the finance arena. Those 3 areas, and we will practice those with an example. So here is the returns of a mutual fund. And you can see the holding period return for each quarter here is given here. We had 10%, 25%, then we had a negative 20, and then a positive 20. So the arithmetic average return is real simple. You just add those up, divide by 4, and you're calculating a simple average, and you get 8.75%. The way the detail on how these are calculated is on page 112 and 113 in the textbook. You'll probably need to refer to that to fill in the blanks. But the geometric return is 1 plus the return for each quarter. So we've got 1.1, 1 plus 0.1, 1 plus 0.25, which is here in the second quarter, and so on. And you add these together, the parts here that are in brackets, and then you multiply by the exponent of 1 quarter, because there's 4 observations here, and then you subtract the 1 back off, and you would get 7.19% is a geometric average return. Now, to use this exponent, you can use the y to the x key on your calculator, which is right over the number 9. And if you do the multiplication for this part here that's in brackets, you'll get 1.32, and then you would hit multiply that, and you would hit the multiplication sign, and then you would push y to the x, and then 0.25 and equals, and then subtract the 1, and you would get 7.19%. Now, the geometric average is also called the time-weighted average return, and it ignores the year-to-year variation in funds under management. So we have inflows and outflows the geometric average ignores that. And regulations require that anything published by mutual funds uses time-weighted average returns or geometric returns. So we need to be familiar with what this is, because that's what you would see when you look up information on a mutual fund. Now, dollar-weighted returns. Dollar-weighted returns. If you've had me before, you know I try to teach you to solve things with a financial calculator rather than formulas if we can. I think that will serve you better over the long haul. So I developed these steps here for you to calculate dollar-weighted average returns with the BA2+. This is not in the textbook. However, if you had me for Financial Management 1, which is a prerequisite for this class, we covered this and practiced this in Chapter 5 of that class. It's not difficult. If you did not go through this before, I also added slides 43 to 47 that gives you more information on using the cash flow register in your calculator to calculate the dollar-weighted average return. Also, there is some information on the dollar-weighted average return on pages 112 and 113 in the textbook. They just don't teach it using the calculator. So I suggest you walk through these steps that I have here. I treat this as if this were a capital investment for a corporation. So it begins with an investment, out-of-the-pocket cash flow, a negative cash flow of -1. And you can see that here, cash flow 0 is a -1. And then we assume that net inflows, this is money that's coming into this mutual fund, are, actually I picked the wrong line, that's right here. So our net inflows, let's skip that right there, that year were 0.1 million. So that was an inflow into the project, an investment into that fund. So that's a negative. Cash flow 1 is a negative 0.1. Cash flow 2 is a negative 0.5, as you can see here. And then we had some outflows beginning in the third quarter. In the third quarter, we had an outflow that we assumed we had to pull money out of the project, so it created cash flow. That's a positive number. And then in the fourth quarter, the final cash flow looks at these two figures right here. We assume that that is a negative because that inflow is assumed to be an investment in the project. So investment, just like the initial investment, is negative. So we had a negative 0.6 and a positive 1.56, which gives us a sum there of 0.96. And that's the entry we make here for the fourth cash flow. So once you enter those, along with the frequency of each cash flow, each one is 1, you'll push IRR on your calculator, then push CPT to compute the internal rate of return. You should get 3.3794 is the internal rate of return for this fund. And since we recognize the net inflows and outflows as cash in or cash out of the project, that makes this a dollar-weighted average return. The dollar-weighted meaning the amount of dollars that were actually in the fund is recognized. Quick concepts on rates of return. Truth in Lending requires on loans that annual percentage rate, APR, is disclosed. So it is the per period rate times the periods per year. It ignores compounding. So if you have a credit card that charges you 1% per month, that's 12 periods in the year. 12 periods per year. You multiply that and you would get an APR of 12%. Now, the EAR does not ignore compounding. So the compound rate is really what is important to us. And your BA2 has an interest rate conversion tool. If you'll push second and then the number 2, you'll see the word NOM pop up. That's nominal. That is the for APR. And I'll push in 12% or 12 in mine right now and then enter. hit down and effective will pop up, and I'll hit compute. Actually, before you hit compute, you've got to hit the up arrow, and you'll see C/Y. That's compounding periods per year. In this case, it's 12, the example I just gave you. So you would put in 12 and enter, and then hit the up arrow key and hit compute, and you'll get 12.68% is the effective annual rate of 1% per month for 12 months. So we're going to stop right here for this video and pick up with inflation issues here in the second video. So in the meantime, remember not to overspend. In fact, spend less than you earn and try to save some money. I'll see you next time.